here we are, the graduate winter. Emily, I'm going to start with you first, of 2026. While general unemployment remains relatively low, the college premium is facing its greatest test in decades. As of 2026, entry-level job postings have plummeted. Now, this is in the graduate area, down nearly 33% in some markets. If we look at them, roughly 6 to 10% of recent grads, we've got a drop in computer science jobs, 13% drop in the ages 22 to 25 for heavily automated fields. So, we're seeing this hollowing out of junior markets where the roles used for training graduates are being automated from a policy thing. Shouldn't we be incentivizing customers to maintain this human training pipeline? I think my simpler question to you is, what do you think about, not really bothering to train humans, that costs a bit, and running the old algae?
Well, it probably won't surprise you to learn that I think it's short-sighted. And, reflecting back over my career, I think there are two comparisons that are called to mind. One is when I started training as a lawyer, it was just this is going to date me, it was in the wake of an enormous financial crash. And law firms reacted by just cutting back on the number of trainees they took on, because it's a sort of an easy knee-jerk reaction. You need to save money, and so you sort of cut back on the juniors. And what happens is then that cohort becomes incredibly small. People drop out of the profession, and so it has an impact for generations to come. So as people move into senior jobs, there's fewer people to select from. But also, I think, all technology and also trends in business and business efficiency particularly come and go, don't they? We as a software company, don't you think?
Well,
don't you think?
I'll come back to that.
Yeah, so I'm here for the sort of calm down everyone status quo arguments, right?
Well, okay, so status quo satisfying? That's my point to you. Is
my second point is, do you remember the outsourcing boom for IT?
Yes, indeed.
It's we suffered a lot from that. Our work dried up. All of our public sector work dried up overnight, maybe 15 years ago. People get very excited. They outsource to a third country, and then they reflect on all of the things they lost, which is a lot of control. So I think it's still worth employing young people, because what we see in our environment is that the young people are using the AI tools incredibly creatively, are turbocharging their own productivity, and at the same time teaching a lot of the older people who are less flexible perhaps, how to use and embrace some of these technologies.
I'm going to come back to you on that, because really you're talking about areas of technological and frontline innovation anyway. I wanted to turn the lens back onto the traditional professional industries and what's been happening or not happening in those, where these sort of advances may be helping or not helping. I'm really interested in that point. I'll come back to that. But first of all, I wanted to talk to you at sort of a tech point, Mark, about they're technically, and we've been looking at, what I didn't realise until I really started spending money on AI is that it requires, to do it properly, it requires thousands and thousands of human hours. So when somebody says to me, "Oh, AI is," have you thought of AI to resolve really big research questions? And I haven't got time to really dig into it as a person at the top of the organisation who's making decisions about where to put resources. You think, oh, okay, let's hire the AI because that will solve it for us. We'll run a few algorithms and we'll get huge amounts of information. And then there's this thing called this gold standard of AI, which requires what?
Yes, and I think that's a really important point, is that you know AI goes so far. The problem, I think, in terms of AI generally in the sort of the tech world, is that it gives you this illusion that it can just solve problems really quickly. And actually, you know, especially from the sort of coding perspective, you can generate really impressive fragments of code that they do work and they look fine. But there are two, I think, massive pitfalls here. One is that, and when it comes to looking at the research piece in particular, there's always AI is predominantly statistical, so therefore there's always an element of uncertainty with the outcome of data compared to classic analysis, which would be the sort of the old-fashioned way of doing it in inverted commas. What you're alluding to there is the need for there to be substantive human review of the AI, which in itself can be extremely resource intensive.
Right. So yeah. and let me try and get this right. We were advised by an AI guru who is part of one of the people we work with, their sort of AI team, who really know the algorithm. They really know the language learning technology, and they advised us that the AI on face value is like a student who's trying to please you with positive answers, but that the AI itself might not have that much confidence about what it's saying to you.
Yes, absolutely. And it's quite funny, some of the conversations you have with the AI, is that you sort of say to it, so, you know, give me some results. And you can ask the question again, how confident are you? And well, actually, I think perhaps I could improve that and give you, you know, and it's almost like it has its own iterative process built into the workflow. So yes, there are definite concerns about even its own confidence, as you say.
And so there's this thing called a gold standard, where you've actually
golden set. It's called.
Yes,
golden set.
And really, I think that's where common sense prevails. And it's interesting that we have been speaking to the people who have developed these tools quite closely, and even they will say to us, no, start with something that you, it's almost like ground truth, that you know is correct. Run it through the AI and you know, convince yourself that the AI is producing at least very close results to what you expect. Okay. That's where the golden set comes in.
And I want to stick with this. So taking this sort of thinking back to replacing graduates, okay, your golden set is being trained on your workforce, which at the moment it would be trained on, you know, AI agents are technically trained on high-level work of seniors, but they're replacing the low-level work of juniors. And if this cycle continues, we're heading towards what they call a knowledge debt, because basically the AI in the future is going to train itself just on a bunch of seniors who were never juniors.
Correct. And I think that is a problem. And I mean, Emily alluded earlier on to the problem of course, it's short-sighted, because, you know, there's going to be not just a knowledge gap, but also as people age, a practical staff gap if you rely too much upon, you know, knowledge that's been passed down. But also, I think one of the points made earlier, I think by you, Emily, is that young people often come with fresh perspective, with new ideas, and, you know, often look at the world through a more modern lens in many cases. And actually, if we rely upon training models just on experts who are, you know, approaching middle age, you run the risk of, you know, ultimately regression rather than progression in terms of technology.
I want to come back with Emily to, you know, what we believe in and what our ethos is at Oxford Information Labs, both with engineers and deep critical researchers and thinkers. Before we do that, I do want to come back to this paradox where we've been thinking about AI sort of destroying jobs that exist and that people are doing pretty well with automation, and they're just doing even quicker now. And what we're saying is that hollows out true organisational learning at the lower end, what we call learning from our younger people. But what about where things are crap anyway? When we think about conveyancing, it can take 6 months to get a lawyer to pick up the bloody phone. Now, I love lawyers. I love one lawyer particularly, but it can take a long time to do something really easy. What about wills and probate law? 2 years to sell a house. And we'll be talking about alternative forms of payment in our next topic. But you've got these areas where and I've said on previous podcasts, the profession is woefully underdeveloped because you're dealing with a culture that's come from the Oxbridge sort of class, which is fantastic and super, but they regard engineering as sort of down there, and that they should be able to do it, and it's easy, and they'll do it, and they haven't seen any reason to do it because it's just the whole profession is pretty poorly developed, and AI kind of gives them that magic that they've been waiting for. Because the ones where I've tried to talk to them about automation in the past, we've automated some quite repetitive workflows, but when you want to automate the sort of early thinking, it's been very difficult because they aren't prepared to invest in it. What about those professions?
Yeah, so I think there definitely are professions, and the legal profession has had an uneven relationship with technology, I think. But ultimately, technological change does affect everybody. When I was training, an entire floor of my law firm was dedicated to the library. And if you wanted to do a research lookup, which would now be done in seconds through even an old-fashioned Google search or chatting to an AI agent, that would take maybe weeks, and it would depend on the librarian's availability, and also things like the categorization of where you would find certain resources was really complicated to learn. And I would suggest a piece of, a skill that was really not very useful. Likewise, if you wanted to do a company search, it would take somebody. There was a company search agent whose job was to go down to companies' house physically and look up companies. So we laugh at that now. That was only 30 years ago. And actually, all of this will come.
But why hasn't it got faster? What's happened? It's got cheaper.
It has got faster, and also there are a lot of skills that are no longer suitable for the modern age. Like it's not very suitable to be, a gaslight turner-oner in the streets anymore, because there just aren't those things. But are people idle? I'm still waiting to sit in my deck chair, having my life of leisure and be able to do my job in 2 minutes a day. No, we're just all actually having to move faster,
taking on more and more work.
So I think still the analytical skills and fundamentally the responsibility for the output is human, and we'll come on to that when we're talking about payments. So if you're taking responsibility for stuff, you don't have to physically do it all, and I think it's again a bit kind of like self-punishing to require yourself to go back to basics. You need to understand what good looks like, and to also but the times are moving.